Hello everyone, my name is Jason, aka Bacon Chest, coach of the Kilda Serperiors, and welcome back. This is my draft analysis video for the Professional Battlers League, which is being run by PB Slaughter. It's a showdown-based league. Just a few details about the league before we get into the draft. 10 teams in this league, you draft 12 mons, and the tiering system is actually using just the basic Smogon tiers, so OU, UU, RU, and NU. At the time of the draft, this was before Marshadow had been released, and also before a few of the new megas had been released, so Blade, Gardevoir, and I can't remember what the third one was, but anyway. And so yeah, using standard Smogon tiering, standard Smogon ban list, this means that a lot of broken shit is available, so things like Tapu Lele, Mega Mawile, Mega Latios, and Greninja, which you usually wouldn't see in these kinds of leagues, were available to be drafted. So, I thought this was quite a fun system. Let's get into what I drafted. So, looking at our first six, we had pick 6 in this draft, so I was really surprised to see Greninja land at that level, and I just had to get it. I mean, with the option of running Protean and Battle Bond, and the Mind Games that you can force opponents to play, Mind Games usually aren't that big of a deal in draft format. It's usually, do you have a berry? The fact that I can have people worried about whether or not I'm Protean or Battle Bond, and given those have very different checks and counters, can be really, really useful. Everyone knows where Greninja is good, but just a couple of things that were very important in terms of a draft league. 122 speed is amazing. Usually people are going to have to run Scarfers to outspeed it, and even if they are Scarfers, Specs Water Shuriken can obviously do quite a bit, particularly if I get that Battle Bond off. 95 attack, 103 special attack is excellent. I can run physical moves, so things like Gunk Shot most often, but even something like Acrobatics if I wanted to hit like a Virizion particularly hard, or you know, I could run a purely physical set if something like Chansey was around. I can run Power Up Punch to try and get +1 on certain things, and also obviously this makes an amazing Z move user with so much coverage. Furthermore, even on top of that, it also has access to spikes and toxic spikes, which means this can potentially be a hazard setter, given it forces so many switches. Yeah, like, there are 100 reasons why Greninja is such a good one. I was really happy to pick it. The next thing we decided to pick up was Landorus T. Obviously another really, really good mon. Again, pretty decent base speed, base speed makes an excellent choice Scarfer. Good mixed offenses, so you can run things like HP Ice for like a Zygarde. You could run even something like, I don't know, like Extra Sensory. You can run HP Fire to hit Scizor. No, actually I have my own Scizor, but run things like Sludge Wave to hit Tapu Bulu. If you don't want to run the Z move, like Z-Fly, or if you don't want to have to predict around Z-Fly. Again, as I've just said, really, really good Z user as well. Z-Fly, Z-Stone Edge, Z-Earthquake, all potentially really helpful. So, and yeah, good thing here is we've got Spikes, T-Spikes, and Stealth Rocks in our first 2 mons without even really truly trying to do that. Like, both of these mons can do those things, but they can do so much more. And this was sort of a theme for my first few mons, was to try and pick up things that were amazing, but that gave me a lot of flexibility in terms of what I could then pick later on. For my last OU pick, we went for Mega Scizor. Now, I can run this as regular Scizor or Mega Scizor in this league. There's no restriction on holding a Mega Stone. I don't have to Mega Evolve immediately, although obviously you will with Scizor if you do run the Mega Stone, but I can run things like Choice Band and Choice Scarf, which is really cool, depending on the team we're up against. Mega Scizor, obviously an amazing mon, synergizes quite well with Landorus T because people are forced to choose between running HP Fire and HP Ice on things like, you know, Tapu Lele or just, you know, other like powerful special attackers, and even powerful physical attackers that might want to try and bust past this thing, because obviously it's got titanic physical bulk, still very good special bulk, and powerful priority. So I've got 2 powerful priority users, one really good Scarfer. Even 75 base speed isn't that bad. We've got nice spread of speed tiers with these 3 mons. Reliable recovery in the form of Roost. It can also run Defog if I do feel like I need that hazard control. So yeah, I was really happy with these 3 picks. Obviously, I'm a little bit fire weak at the moment, given that Greninja is not a very good fire resist, generally, and especially if it runs Protean, because it won't necessarily be a water type all the time, or even most of the time. So yeah, moving on to UU picks, I wanted to pick up fire resist. I wanted to pick up a different form of hazard removal that wasn't Mega Scizor, so that I freed that mon up a little bit. And obviously I wanted to fill out my start filling out my cores, like my Fire, Water, Grass core and my Fairy, Dragon, Steel core. So we managed to do a few of those things with our UU picks. So first UU pick, I went for Latias. Obviously excellent defogger, can use Healing Wish, which is amazing. Has really good bulk, so it's going to be able to switch into those fire and water moves that, like, my first 3 aren't really wanting to switch into. Particularly on the special side, this gave me, between Latias, Scizor, and Landorus, a really good core of pivots. I'm not particularly fond of running like really bulky stall teams, but I do really like running offense teams that nonetheless can switch into things. Obviously you might have to predict around stuff, but yeah, these give me a lot of pivoting options, particularly given all 3 of my first 3 mons can run U-turn. That can be really helpful. Obviously has a huge move pool, can run physical, although obviously not as effectively as Latios, but usually is going to be seen running special, maybe running Earthquake for something like Heatran, but otherwise things like Draco, Energy Ball, Hidden Powers, Psyshock, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, you know, Surf, these kind of moves, really, really good. Can run, again, Reliable Recovery in the form of Recover, can also run Wish, but although probably not very likely, and also has Tailwind, which gives me really good speed control. Not much is going to OHKO Latias with the defenses that it does have, so I can potentially get off a last-ditch Tailwind, and even, you know, not much is going to outspeed it and OHKO it, especially with 110 base speed. For our last UU pick, we went for what I think is a really, really good Fairy type, excuse me, in the form of Sylveon. Obviously Pixelate been nerfed a little bit in Gen 7, but 1.2 times power. Hyper Voice is still very, very powerful. This thing is going to hit incredibly hard with 110 special attack. A very good special wall, so between... did I just skip straight to Sylveon from Latias and not talk about Volcanion? I did do that. Oh well, we'll get back to Volcanion in a second. But yeah, Sylveon with Hyper Voice and usually Hidden Power Fire to hit Steel types, Psyshock to hit Poison types, Hidden Power Fire also hits... so hits Steel types, yeah. And that's basically all the coverage you're ever really going to need. Can run Heal Bell, can run Wish, can run Protect. Has some really good options. Usually I'll probably be running to run something like Choice Specs, but depending on the week, Choice Scarf might even be useful, depending on how slow my opponent's team is. But yeah, either Choice Specs or like a bulky set. Unfortunately, because this is in OU tiers, Baton Pass is banned, so I can't run a dry Baton Pass set, which is a little bit annoying, but not too worried about that. Base 95 HP, base 130 SPDF. It's obviously not going to take hits on the physical side particularly well, but it can usually tank a hit from something just because its base HP is quite good. And usually I'm not going to be running any speed on it, so I can invest in that bulk. So yeah, I was pretty happy to get Sylveon. And the last mon I picked here, which I think really synergizes quite well with this team, is Volcanion. Volcanion switches in really well to Steel-type hits that Sylveon might not want to take. It switches in really well to the Bug-type hits that Greninja and Latios might not want to take. It switches in really well to the Fire and Water-type hits that things like Scizor and Landorus don't want to take. So it's a really, really good pivot, and it is so powerful. You know, with Modest, it hits 394 special attack. With a Choice Specs, that's going to be blowing things back with Steam Eruption. Gets all the coverage it really needs in the form of Fire, Water, and Ground. Might have to run HP Ice some weeks, but most of the time that's really not necessary because Steam Eruption is just so hard to switch into, particularly with that chance to burn. Oh yeah, and it gets Sludge Bomb and Sludge Wave in case there's particular things that I need to hit. Can can even run things like Superpower, and I really like Explosion as well as an option, just to stop anything that can potentially switch in from setting up on me. Yeah, I mean, so far I'm finding that when I'm team building, it's actually great because I can just run Steam Eruption, maybe a Fire move, and then I can often run a backup water move in the form of something like Scald, just so I have that guaranteed hit. Also has Flash Cannon if there's a particular fairy that I need to be able to hit, that kind of thing. Has a couple of status options, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with Volcanion. So I was pretty happy with the team at this point. I wanted some more ways of setting up hazards. I didn't want to limit Greninja and Landorus to those options every week. I just wanted them to be able to be a threat in that regard, but not necessarily to be bringing them in that form every week. And yeah, I wanted a bit more type versatility, obviously. As you can see at the moment, you can just kind of tell that there's not that much versatility at the moment, given just the colours of the team. It's all very red and pink. You know, we needed that colour variety. Not really, but you'll see that we do actually get that a bit here. So, let's look at the last 6 months we brought, we picked up. So, moving into RU, I decided to pick up Roserade. Roserade, obviously, spikes, T-spikes, sleep powder. Technician boosted HP fire or HP ground or HP ice can be really, really clutch, because 90 base power is huge on a move like that, when you're usually going to be hitting 4 times super effectively. Gets powerful grass type moves like Giga Drain, Energy Ball, Leaf Storm, depending on even something like Petal Dance if I really, really want to. And, you know, it doesn't really need much else in the form of coverage. Gets Shadow Ball if it wants to hit, like a if it wants to hit like a Latias, sorry, no, I am Latias, a Latios, and has Sludge Bomb. So, yeah. Has reliable recovery, well, semi-reliable recovery in the form of Synthesis. Obviously, weather can impact on that, but yeah. And again, very good Spadef. So we've got a lot of special bulk at this point. I did want to pick up a bit more physical bulk towards the end of the draft. But what I did, actually, yes, one thing I had noticed, if you look at this first half of the draft, is that Bolt Beam coverage really does put in a number on this team at the moment. So Greninja's going down to Thunderbolt, Landorus goes down to Ice Beam, Scizor isn't going to take Thunderbolts all that well, particularly if they're Stab, Latias is not taking Ice Beams all that well, Volcanion's not taking Thunderbolt, Sylveon can take hits, but, you know, with Wish, it can be a little bit dicey, particularly if they're trying to set up, like something like a Calm Mind Raikou or something like that could be a bit problematic. Obviously, Roserade doesn't help with that, but our next pick really does, so this is Rotom Heat. This was largely, honestly, as you'll see when I upload my prep and game for week 1, was largely to deal with Magearna, because Magearna is a huge problem for every team, and Rotom Heat is a pretty good stop to it. It takes, I think, around 35 to 40% from a Z all-out pummeling. It might have been a little bit higher, but it doesn't, the point is, it doesn't take that much from even its best move to hit this thing. Ice Beam, T-Bolt, Dazzling Gleam, Flash Cannon, none of those are doing anything to Rotom. It can Pain Split up, it can click Overheat, it can click Volt Switch, it can click Will-O-Wisp. It has a lot of really good utility, and furthermore it gives me an Earthquake immunity, which is nice. Not that I'm hugely lacking on those already, with Lati and Lando. But yeah, and it gives me things to switch into something like Mamoswine, for example, which could be an issue. Other than that, doesn't have a huge amount of versatility. Can run things like Discharge, can run things like Hex, if I'm running a T-Spikes team or something like that. But generally, I just wanted something to take on Magearna and other Bolt Beam kind of mons that would otherwise be quite threatening. Just, again, like a bulky pivot. And what you've seen is with all these mons is that they all can hit really hard. They don't have to. They can be fairly bulky as well, but they all have the capacity to hit fairly hard, and 105 special attack is not really to be laughed at. Again, this is sort of more of the hyper offense part of the draft, but our last RU pick went for Swellow. I was tempted to draft Gigalith and go for like a budget sand core with like Gigalith and Stoutland, or Gigalith and Lycanroc. But I couldn't go past Swellow, because Swellow gives me another mon hits that really good speed tier that's like where it's above 120, so it's outspeeding like almost all of the metagame. It's outspeeding like slow Scarfers if I run Timid, and the other thing I love about Swellow is that whilst I don't necessarily have very many good mixed attackers among my first sort of few mons, like the closest being maybe Ninja, I suppose, maybe Landorus, but they're usually running like physical or special respectively as coverage rather than as primary attacks. Swellow, on the other hand, has two equally viable sets in Guts and Scrappy, with either Brave Bird and Facade or Boom Burst and Heat Wave that opponents are going to have to prep for. This thing can potentially sweep through teams with either Guts Flame Orb or Specs Boom Burst. There aren't a huge amount of switch-ins, especially if I can get some hazards up. So yeah, that was basically it, as well as a pretty simple mod. And I mean, also gets defog, so it does technically give me a third form of hazard removal. I doubt I'll be bringing it with defog very often, but who knows, could be a thing. And yeah, so also gets another one that gets U-turn for momentum, so we've got like U-turn, Volt Switch, a few U-turn, 3 U-turners in our first 6 months. I've got plenty of ways to keep up momentum. Moving into NU, I saw that Necrozma was still there, at, I think it's maybe the 5th pick in NU because of the snake style of the draft, but anyway, I saw that Necrozma was still there, and you just have to pick this thing up, right? Like, I mean, it helped in terms of what I wanted to get from my NU mons, which was I wanted another Stealth Rocker. I picked up another Spiker and T-Spiker in the form of Roserade. I wanted another Stealth Rocker. Necrozma is a very reliable Stealth Rocker. It doesn't die to anything, really. Like, if I don't want it to die to anything, it just won't die to anything. Like, maybe there might be a few mons with, like, Specs Dark Pulse that can kill it, or Specs Bug Buzz or something, but generally, it only takes, I think, around 54 from Life Orb Weavile, with Knockoff, which, you know, I think just is a testament to how bulky this thing is. It's also got excellent special attack and quite good attack as well, which means with its coverage, given it can run things like Earthquake, it can run things like Flash Cannon, it's got recovery in the form of Moonlight. It's an excellent Stealth Rocker for me. And yeah, so I was pretty happy with this choice, this pickup. And I think, you know, as an NU pick, it's obviously being underrated there. Like, obviously it's not necessarily that good in a Smogon sense, but in this kind of draft tier format, it gives me something, a threat that people have to watch out for. And, you know, it can also be run just offensively with things like Calm Mind, with things like Autotomize to potentially get through a sweep. And yeah, so that was pretty good. Next up, we had Virizion coming back once again. I did notice at this point that my Dark Resists were a little bit minimal after I picked up Necrozma, so I decided to pick up Virizion because it's a pretty good Dark type switch in, as we saw in the War for All. Also switches into electric attacks, although not if I get paralyzed. But yeah, generally can take a hit on the special side, and can set up Sword Dances, set up Calm Minds, and hit really hard with things like Energy Ball, hit really hard with things like Close Combat. Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable using Virizion. 108 base speed is quite nice. And yeah, I did kind of want to pick up Scrafty, but it got sniped. Scrafty would have been a more reliable Dark-type switch-in terms of just, there isn't much coverage, I suppose, like Dark fighting, but generally Scrafty is a bit, you know, it's a bit bulkier, it's a bit, got that mixed defenses, got the Intimidate ability, or potentially the Shed Skin. But I'm okay with Virizion, because it does give me another faster on that people have to watch out for. Means they can't just mindlessly click Knockoff and Dark Pulse, because I will get that justified boost. So yeah, I was pretty happy with Virizion. Last mon we decided to pick up was Cofagrigus. This gives us another Toxic Spiker, gives us a spin blocker against certain teams. If I don't particularly care about having hazards up on my side of the field, which I might not, depending on the team that I've brought, then Cofagrigus can block spin from happening. It can use that Mummy ability to help check things like Mega Pinsir. It can help check things like any Technician users or Tough Claws users like Mega Charizard X, these kind of things. So yeah, Kyphagros gives me a few options there. The other thing it gave me was that I was kind of lacking up until this point was a response to Trick Room, because as you can see, my team is pretty fast overall. Like, I mean, aside from like Rotom and Necrozma with like 86 and 79, you've basically got like Sylveon being my slowest mon up until this point with base speed of 60. So obviously like a lot of okay, cool. Just checking I wasn't revealing any upcoming teams there, but that's okay. I think they're on my laptop rather than on this computer. Yeah, so you've got a lot of mons that are sort of that base 50, base 40 speed, things like, or even base 33, but things like Mega Camerupt and things like other like big powerful hitters that are fairly slow could have potentially taken advantage of my team, particularly if they can beat Sylveon. That could have been a problem. Kyphagros gives me a good response to those. It's got Titanic defenses, quite good special attack with access to Nasty Plot, with access to things like Destiny Bond, Pain Split, lot of momentum moves like Memento, things like Knockoff, Trick, T-Spikes. Yeah, so this gave me a lot of utility. I think for a last pick in NU, well, you know, obviously there's not that much available that's going to be really, really helpful. I think this was a pretty good option. Also, yeah, it gives me a normal immunity, which can potentially be useful against sort of powerful normal types, or, you know, even just kind of defensive normal types that want to spam Body Slam, so things like Miltank, for example. So yeah, so I was pretty happy with this draft overall. I'll be uploading my first battle soon, probably sometime the next day or two. But yeah, this should be a really fun league. I'm really looking forward to it. And until next time, peace.